Camp Half-Blood isn't for the weak. You need some serious skills to survive in this place.
For us ordinary folk, it's a torture chamber. But for demigods, this place is the difference between surviving and not making it past your first week. We're breaking down every location inside Camp Half-Blood and what each one is really designed to do. Where Camp Half-Blood actually is. Camp Half-Blood is hidden on the north shore of Long Island, New York, but you're not finding it on a map because to most people, it doesn't exist. The mist, a magical force that bends reality, makes sure mortals either see nothing or something completely different. A strawberry farm, a private estate, anything but a training ground for demigods. And that illusion isn't just for secrecy, it's for survival. Because the moment a demigod is exposed, monsters can find them. And the stronger the demigod, the faster they're hunted. Camp Half-Blood exists in one of the most populated parts of the world, not to hide from people, but to hide among them. And that location isn't random either. It sits close to Mount Olympus, which in the modern world rests above New York City. Because as Western civilization moves, Olympus moves with it, and Camp Half-Blood stays within reach of the gods. Close enough for guidance, close enough for protection, and close enough for the occasional intervention when things go wrong. But even with all of that, location alone isn't enough to keep this place safe. Because once you actually reach the edge of camp, that's where the real protection begins. The border, the only thing keeping you alive. If you somehow make it to Camp Half-Blood, you don't just walk in, you cross a line. Half-Blood Hill is the only true entrance to the camp, and it's where the illusion ends and the protection begins. Standing at the top of that hill is the reason the camp still exists. Thalia Grace. Before the camp was secure, it was vulnerable. Monsters could find it, track it, and attack it without much resistance. That changed when Thalia made a last stand to protect her friends. She didn't survive, but her father, Zeus, stepped in at the final moment and transformed her into a pine tree at the top of the hill. That tree became more than a memorial. It became the core of the camp's magical barrier, a living shield powered by sacrifice keeping monsters out and the camp hidden from the outside world. But even that protection hasn't always held. At one point, the tree was poisoned and the barrier began to fail, leaving the entire camp exposed. It was only restored when the golden fleece was placed on its branches, strengthening the barrier and bringing it back to life. Guarding all of this is Peleus, a dragon that never sleeps, because if that border falls, Camp Half-Blood doesn't get invaded. It gets overrun, and everything inside it doesn't stand a chance. And if you manage to make it past that border, that's when you finally see what Camp Half-Blood really is, because inside everything is organized for one purpose, and it all starts at the center of the camp. The heart of camp? Control and power. At the center of Camp Half-Blood, everything is controlled, not by walls or weapons, but by structure. And it all starts with the big house. This is where the camp is run from, led by Chiron, the one responsible for training demigods to survive in a world that wants them dead. Alongside him is Dionysus, a god who would rather be anywhere else but still holds authority over everything that happens here. But the most important part of the big house isn't visible. Hidden in the attic is the oracle, the voice of prophecy. It determines which quests happen, who goes on them, and who might not come back. Without it, the camp has no direction, no missions, and no real way to fight back against what's out there. Just outside the big house is where camp life really takes shape. The cabins are arranged in a U-shape, 20 in total, each one dedicated to an Olympian god. This is where demigods live, train, and begin to really understand who they are. Where you stay isn't random. It determines who you train with, how you fight, and what kind of abilities you develop. A child of Ares isn't being shaped the same way as a child of Athena, and that difference starts the moment they step into their cabin. At the center of all of it is the dining pavilion, an open space where everyone comes together to eat, regroup, and offer part of their meal to the gods. Even here, in one of the calmest places in camp, everything still traces back to them. At Camp Half-Blood, everything about you traces back to your godly parent. But structure alone doesn't make you stronger, because just beyond all of this is where the real training begins. Training grounds, where demigods are made. Structure might define Camp Half-Blood, but it doesn't make anyone stronger. That happens here, in the training grounds, where everything is designed to push demigods to their limits. At the center of it all is the arena, where combat isn't theoretical. This is where demigods spar, test their abilities, and sometimes face real monsters. It's controlled, but only just, because the goal isn't comfort, it's preparation. And then there's the climbing wall, not a normal one, but a wall that erupts with lava as you climb. Handholds shift, heat builds, and one mistake is enough to send you falling. It's not there to be fair. It's there to force you to adapt under pressure. Just beyond that is the forge, run by the children of Hephaestus. This is where weapons are built, armor is crafted, and inventions come to life. For some demigods, this is where their real strength comes from, not in brute force, but in what they create. And everything they build ends up in the armory, a place stocked with weapons designed to fight creatures most people don't even believe exist. Swords, spears, shields, not for display, but for survival. Training here isn't about improving over time, it's about getting ready before something kills you. But it's not constant, because even in this place, demigods can feel normal. Well, as normal as can be. Camp life, the illusion of normal. Not every moment at Camp Half-Blood is spent fighting or training. For a few hours each day, it almost feels like a normal summer camp. There's the campfire where demigods gather at night to sing, tell stories, and forget about everything waiting for them outside the border. It's one of the few places where the tension drops, even if only for a little while. During the day, there are moments of downtime, volleyball games, conversations, time to breathe between training sessions. It's structured chaos, but it still gives the illusion that life here can be normal. There's even an arts and crafts area where campers build, create, and focus on something that isn't survival. For some, it's a break. For others, especially the children of Hephaestus, it's just another form of training. And then there's the infirmary, a quiet reminder of what this place really is, because no matter how normal things might feel, people get hurt here. A lot. Even something as simple as eating isn't normal. At the dining pavilion, part of every meal is offered to the gods, a ritual that reinforces one thing above everything else. Nothing here is separate from them. This is the stark reality of Camp Half-Blood. It can feel calm, it can feel safe, but that feeling never lasts. And once you step away from the routines, you start to realize that even the calmest parts of this camp aren't as safe as they seem. The safe zones that aren't safe. Step away from the main camp and things feel different. Not dangerous, just less controlled. But that's the problem. The forest looks peaceful, but it's never stable. Paths shift, sounds carry strangely, and it's easy to forget this isn't just woodland. It's still part of a world where monsters exist, and not all of them stay outside the border. Canoe Lake feels calm too. A place to relax, switch off, breathe, but water in this world doesn't stay calm for long. What looks still on the surface can turn without warning. The beach gives the same illusion, open space, fresh air, the edge of the camp, but that's exactly what it is. The edge. One step further, and you're no longer protected. And then there's the Grove of Dodona, trees that whisper, respond, and don't always make sense, not hostile, just unpredictable. That's the pattern here. The closer something feels to normal, the easier it is to let your guard down. And at Camp Half-Blood, that's exactly when you should be paying attention. Because the biggest threat here isn't coming over the border, it's coming from underneath it. The hidden threat beneath the camp. For all its protection, structure, and training, Camp Half-Blood has one major weakness. It can be reached from below. Deep under the camp lies the Labyrinth, an ancient shifting maze built by Daedalus that stretches far beyond anything on the surface. It doesn't follow normal rules, paths change, distances warp, and once you're inside, getting lost isn't a possibility, it's expected. Two places that should be miles apart can sit side by side, while a straight path can turn into a dead end without warning, and it isn't sealed off. There are entrances hidden within Camp Half-Blood itself. That means enemies don't need to break through the border to reach it. They can come up from underneath, bypassing the one line of defense the camp relies on. That's happened before. The Labyrinth has been used to move forces directly into the camp, forcing demigods to fight battles on ground that was supposed to be secure. Not at the border, not outside, right in the middle of where they live. The real problem is that the Labyrinth can't be controlled. It expands, shifts, and connects to places across the world, including areas tied to monsters, titans, and other threats. There's no fixed map, no reliable way to track movement, and no guarantee that an entrance won't appear somewhere new. So even if the barrier above ground holds, it doesn't solve the problem. It just delays it. Because as long as the Labyrinth exists beneath Camp Half-Blood, there's always another way in. And that means the one place built to protect demigods is never completely secure. The world beyond Camp Half-Blood. Camp Half-Blood might feel like its own world, but it's only one part of a much larger system. Across the country, there's another camp built for demigods, Camp Jupiter. Located on the West Coast, it follows a completely different structure. Where Camp Half-Blood trains individuals, Camp Jupiter builds soldiers. It's more disciplined, more organized, and built around the idea of legions rather than cabins. The difference between the two camps shows how the same gods can create entirely different systems depending on how they're worshipped. Greek and Roman aspects, same origins, but completely different approaches to survival. And the world doesn't stop at the surface. Beneath everything lies the underworld, a realm that every demigod is tied to whether they realize it or not. It isn't just a place you go after death. It has entrances scattered across the world, meaning the boundary between life and death is never as far away as it seems. That's what makes Camp Half-Blood important. It isn't isolated. It sits at the center of a network that includes gods, monsters, titans, and forces that exist far beyond anything happening inside the camp itself. Because no matter how protected it feels, everything inside Camp Half-Blood is connected to something outside it. And those connections are what shape the threats demigods are being trained to face. Why Camp Half-Blood exists. Camp Half-Blood is built around one idea. Survival comes first, everything else comes after. Out in the real world, most demigods don't last long. They're hunted by monsters, drawn into conflicts they didn't choose, and forced to survive without understanding what they are. Camp Half-Blood gives them something they wouldn't have otherwise: training, structure, and a place where they're not alone. But even here, safety is temporary. The border can fail. The Labyrinth creates openings no one can fully control, and the wider world keeps pushing back. Everything inside the camp, from the cabins, the arena, and the forest, exists to prepare demigods for that reality. Because sooner or later, they have to leave. And when they do, the camp can't protect them anymore. That's why Camp Half-Blood exists. Not to keep demigods safe forever, but to give them a fighting chance when they're on their own. Camp Half-Blood isn't hidden because it's peaceful. It's hidden because it's the only place demigods have a chance of surviving. Because out there, there are no borders. Everyone wants to be a demigod until they see what Camp Half-Blood is really like. Do you think you'd survive it? Let us know in the comments. We'll be responding to the best ones.